the history of the Elimination Chamber. Now, this was brought in to originally replace the Hell in a Cell. A lot of people don't know that they were actually going to phase out the Hell in a Cell when this was originally put in, but you know, they made it larger, they made it bigger, and strictly 6 participants, and then, you know, have an elimination style match until the sole survivor. So kind of an amalgamation of the Elimination Chamber, a War Games kind of thing, and then also having the whole timed element as well, brought into it.
It had this kind of Survivor Series team because that's where it debuted.
Yeah, exactly. It debuted in 2002, I believe, if I'm corrected. And I love the announcement that Eric Bischoff came out, and I remember he actually came out and said, right, we're going to have this new gimmick announced on the pay-per-view, and the promos that were arranged, you know, with the miles of chain and the plexiglass. It was just really, really good. The way they built it up, it actually seemed like a big deal. Oh yeah, here, as Wikipedia says, they go, the Elimination Chamber match was the combined elements of the WWE's Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, and War Games matches. I was trying to come up with Royal Rumble. It was in my head, Gary, but you know, the brain's a little bit foggy. Only one coffee today, sadly.
Yeah, I have the Wikipedia article as well, and it has the structure itself is 16 foot high, 36 foot in diameter, weighs over 10 tons, and comprised of 2 miles of chain link fence. That's
lifted directly from the promo that we're talking about.
That is lifted directly.
Yeah, they should have quotations on that.
You know, if it's on Wikipedia,
it has to be true.
It's got to be true.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, but for sometimes they get things right. I find with wrestling, usually.
More often than not, they're a safe bet.
They're a safe bet. Don't use it for anything else, kids. If you're writing an article for college, don't use it.
Get a real book.
Get a real book, exactly. Alright, so we're going back to this. So the first match, as we said, was in 2002, and it was a hallmark match for a lot of people. It's the match that Shawn Michaels won the belt and kickstarted a really, really cool series with Triple H. Take us back there, Gary. What did you think when you saw this for the first time?
I mean, you were kind of hit by the grandeur of it all. It was a hark back to seeing the first Hell in a Cell match, and all the kind of big spot-filled matches that, I mean, growing up during the Attitude Era, we saw an awful lot. So it was kind of difficult to be bowled away by something, but that the structure being lowered down, that was just, it was a really cool sight. And then everybody coming out and being locked in these pods. It had a big match feel, and seeing it, the visual of it was just amazing. And then the fact that, you know, it was really Shawn's kind of official match back.
Yeah,
his first one, he had the match against Triple H at SummerSlam,
the unsanctioned street fight,
the unsanctioned match, and it had that air of, you weren't really sure how it was going to go.
Yeah, true.
You didn't know who was going to win. Like Jericho was in it, RVD was in it,
Kane and Booker T. Yeah,
Kane. It was kind of, it was going into the unknown. We didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, everybody, I think, when I think back, I think everybody thought, oh, Triple H is winning. And then Shawn won, and I mean, it had the huge spot with RVD doing the 5-star.
That was cool. That was very cool.
Off the top.
And that's when RVD was getting some huge airtime as well. That was awesome.
Oh, and he was getting over like big.
Yeah, it was cool. And Chris Jericho did some really, really cool spots in it as well.
Yeah, but I mean, the other thing is that people don't realize, because that move kind of essentially took RVD out of the match because he jarred his knee. But if you watch that match, his knee goes directly onto Triple H's throat, and Triple H wrestles the next, I think it's 20 odd minutes with a crushed larynx.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I mean, like, we were talking about Bret Hart a couple of weeks ago and said, you know, Triple H never did anything, and like, to have a crushed larynx and carry on to what was, I mean, that was such a huge match. As you say, it was a hallmark match.
And again, just getting back to Triple H, you know, the man has wrestled 2 matches when he blew out his quads. So
yeah.
You know, Bret, what have you done? Not much. You know, look, I flat out say I don't like Bret Hart. InternationalSRSV.com if you want to rant at me there, I don't mind. But yeah, continuing on. So from that, we had the match Shawn Michaels won, and then we had the next one at SummerSlam. Now, Triple H did win this one, and this was when under Goldberg's major run, and the lineup for this, Gary, was a little bit less spectacular. Triple H, Goldberg, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, and Randy Orton. Now, this was just before the breakup, or just after the breakup of Evolution, I think, if memory serves.
Yeah.
And they were still,
No.
Oh, no, it was just before.
Yeah, you're jumping a good bit ahead, I think.
I think I am. Yeah, this was just before, because Randy helped Triple H win the match, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, and they beat up Goldberg and trapped him in the pod and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and they had the sledgehammer and all that jazz. And, yeah, I wasn't too gone on this match.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't. I think this is the one that, well, aside from the one we'll get to now in a moment, this is the one that a lot of people don't have fond memories of it. And you had, it was at SummerSlam, so it was in the middle of the summer. It felt really weird.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that Triple H won, I think everybody was kind of... Sometimes the simplest thing with booking is to give the people what they want. And they wanted that belt on Goldberg.
Oh, they did, yeah.
They
Badly.
really did. And like, I'm in no way a Goldberg fan. I don't get it with him, you know? But, I mean, that belt at that time was the right thing to do. And I think that's why it kind of soured a lot of people.
Definitely, it was the beginning of Triple H being on top. 2003, 2004, maybe in 2005 was, all Triple H until Batista broke through that glass ceiling. And that's when I walked away from it because of stuff like that, 2004, 2005. So this time we're getting into a little bit of a hazy atmosphere. For example, the next one that we're talking about here, the next two that we're talking about, a New Year's Revolution 2005. And then 2006. 2006 actually sticks with me because I was actively watching wrestling again, but the one at the year prior where Triple H won at a New Year's Revolution 2005, I actually have no memory of at all.
I actually quite liked that one. It was, I mean, they were doing the kind of long build with Batista.
Yeah.
And Triple H. And I can't remember who is going to beat Batista in the match, but Triple H can clearly break up the pinfall,
but doesn't.
And he doesn't.
Was it Benoit?
Just kind of sinks back into the corner.
Was it Benoit?
I think it might have been Benoit. Yeah, it might have been a crossface.
Because they were getting ready for the build of Benoit at WrestleMania, weren't they?
Yeah. And it was, so sometimes the simple things work so effectively. And Triple H could have saved Batista, but he didn't. Now, as a match, I mean, it's a good match, but from the storytelling, and I mean, this is what made Batista all this sort of stuff. When Flair and Triple H were talking about Batista in the locker room, when he won the Rumble, and they wanted him to go after JBL so they could dominate both Raw and SmackDown. Just all these little subtle things. And yeah, the one in the chamber was done very, very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as I said, moving on, then we had 2006, the same pay-per-view, New Year's Revolution. John Cena, Kurt Angle, Carlito, Chris Masters, Shawn Michaels, and Kane were in this match, and this, of course, was the big shock ending. And I'll never forget actually watching it. I wasn't watching it live. I was watching a replay of it. Remember, they'd replay it on like a Monday night, and it's when on Sky. It's when they had Vince McMahon come out and Edge cash in on a bloody John Cena.
Yeah, as a chamber match, it's probably my least favorite.
Yeah, it wasn't a great match, but the end of it, I think it's more famous for than anything else.
Yeah. Like, why was Carlito and Chris Masters in it?
Well, it was Raw. It was the Raw brand, and it was when weaknesses.
It was a thin Raw brand at that stage.
A very thin Raw brand.
I mean, if you can put Carlito and Chris Masters in a match of that
caliber,
of that level. But yeah, I mean, that whole pay-per-view will always stick in the memory because that was the one where Edge cashed in.
And I also had a very good match with Jeff Hardy and Johnny Nitro in a cage, I think, as well.
Yeah. And I mean, Edge had a decent match with Flair to open that.
That's true.
Well.
That's very true as well, yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's like, as watching wrestling, it's very rarely we get surprised and like totally blown out of the water with stuff. I mean, Jericho returning at the Rumble this year was one. We were like, oh my God, we had the proper mark out moments.
Yeah.
But I mean, when Vince came out and said there was going to be one more match and Edge came out, yeah, that was totally surprising. And I mean, that's why that pay-per-view will go down in history.
Yeah, it still sticks with you.
But it won't go down for the Chamber match.
No, definitely not. It's as Gary said, it's the most forgettable of all Chamber matches, I think, in that time period before it became a staple in February. And there's one more match before that happened, and that was at ECW's December to Dismember in 2006. Now, this pay-per-view is infamous for a lot of reasons. If you haven't seen it, buy the DVD, watch it, and then be like, Dara, why did you tell me to buy that DVD? Well, it's good to have in your collection. I do, and I watch from time to time just to keep in mind how bad things can get and to give myself some perspective. Yeah, this was the extreme Elimination Chamber. Okay, it had weapons all over it. Big Show, Bobby Lashley, Hardcore Holly, CM Punk, Test, and RVD. Now, Sabu was supposed to be in this, and they ran an angle earlier on in the night to get him eliminated, and I think they replaced him with Test. So from the beginning this match was doomed, and Bobby Lashley ended up winning it. It's a cluster, you know what. It's a terrible match. CM Punk was the first person to get eliminated. That's not why it was a terrible match, but it is kind of an indication where they were going with this brand. Hardcore Holly did a lot better in a Test, Bobby Lashley and the Big Show. Now, Bobby Lashley was a big player in the WWE at this time. For anybody who doesn't know who he is, this is the Failure MMA guy, the Failure in TNA guy. This is who the WWE decided to back. Gary, what did you think about this match overall? Do you agree with what I said there, or do you have any other comments?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. When I was talking about the 2005 match, I realised halfway through what I was saying about it being the worst Elimination Chamber match.
Well, no, you're right, because this is an extreme Elimination Chamber match.
Okay, well then it is the worst extreme Elimination Chamber match. The one and only. It was, on paper, they could have done so much with it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if people don't know, Heyman wanted to book this match in a certain way, which Vince disagreed with. They hammered it out, and Heyman left that night, and Vince was left in charge of booking an ECW pay-per-view. Heyman wanted Punk to win. He wanted Punk to go over, and Punk ended up being the first one eliminated. It was, yeah, you summed it up, an absolute cluster. Insert expletive here.
Yeah,
it was just god awful. The premise, I mean, it so should have worked. It really should have.
Yeah.
But it was the wrong result. The wrong person went over. I mean, having someone like Bobby Lashley represent the ECW brand was just so inane. I mean, why? He's a WWE guy.
Yeah. Like he's an established WWE guy. He's not even just some low class jobber who they can work and mold, you know.
Yeah, but like when they were bringing people in to ECW, there was CM Punk was the guy.
Yeah,
he was the guy who could have been in ECW during the heyday, and he was definitely the guy to lead it on.
Yeah,
and I mean, for them to go with Bobby Lashley, as you say, it was a clear indication of what Vince wanted to do with ECW.
Yeah, and to be fair, if he had have called it anything else, which he eventually has done, and now it's NXT, then it would have been okay. But the fact it was ECW and they were marketing as a continuation of the, quote, legacy, it just flopped on its face.
Big time. That's why there was never another ECW pay-per-view.
Arguably, that's why the brand eventually just went sour, because, you know, people were done up with it. And a lot of people actually walked away and went to TNA to take up their extreme fix. And TNA actually got really, really good around then. Shortly afterwards, Kurt Angle went over to TNA with Christian Cage doing his thing over there. So, in a way, it did have a positive consequence, but still, terrible match and a stain on the WWE history as far as this match goes. All right, so after that we had the Elimination Chamber moving to where it is now, moving to February. First as part of the No Way Out show in 2008 and 2009, then the Elimination Chamber in 2010, 2011 and 2012. Gary, so instead of having one match every year, or sometime in 2006 we had two, we were presented with two Elimination Chambers in one night. What was the problem with this? Do you think this damaged the match in any way for you as a wrestling fan?
It didn't. I mean, it's a lot simpler to conduct an Elimination Chamber match because you have the intervals and it's spaced out. So compare it to, say, the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, where a couple of years ago I think we had 3 Hell in a Cell matches in a night.
Yeah, and the tag team match as well.
Yeah, but those matches are all the same. At least with the Elimination Chamber matches, there's a bit of variation. I was very, very skeptical about having 2 chamber matches on a pay-per-view because you're always worried about, okay, well, what is it going to be, the first match? Is it going to be the second match? And then which one gets precedence? You know, is it going to be the SmackDown chamber that's going to headline? Is it going to be the Raw chamber that's going to headline? And so on and so forth. I think there has been certain pay-per-views for the Elimination Chamber where one chamber would have sufficed a lot better, because the other one just ended up being kind of forgettable. If you think about the one where Jericho won the belt. Yeah. I think it was 2010.
It was 2000. No, yes, it was 2010.
Yeah, I mean that match stands out far more to me than the Raw one.
Yeah, we were actually watching that over in your place, I believe, and we even said that the Raw match was so badly put together. You had Ted DiBiase, Kofi Kingston in there with Randy Orton and Sheamus, who at the time didn't really seem to care. Sheamus was the champion, but not a very, very good champion. He just won the belt at TLC, so still not very, very popular, playing the heel. Triple H and John Cena not doing a lot. It was very, very paint by the numbers. But the SmackDown match, even though R-Truth was in it, Rey Mysterio, Punk, Morrison, Undertaker, it was masterfully put together.
And I mean, if you look, I mean, Rey and Jericho, they were kind of consistent throughout the whole thing. I mean, Rey put in such a shift. Such a shift. And it shows how good he is. Like, if people are always like, oh, well, Rey Mysterio, he's small and all this stuff, that would be one of the matches that I'd urge them to watch. Because you see how good a worker he is in that match.
How good he can be if he's given the right circumstances. But even now that he's got on a few years and he's a shell of what he used to be, he can still pull out performances when they need it. Another good thing about 2010, it's when Shawn Michaels popped up from underneath the ring and super kicked The Undertaker. Yeah,
see, that's what I mean. Like, that moved on so many storylines, you know, because I think Edge had won the Rumble.
Yeah.
And it was kind of clear that he was going to go against Jericho. Jericho won. So that forwarded that storyline on. So then it was going to be Edge was going to go against Jericho for the title. Shawn Michaels popping up out from under the ring because he wanted to get the rematch with Taker.
Yeah.
That match did more for the storylines going into WrestleMania than the Raw match did.
And that's true, because the Raw match, they still had to piece the main event together, and it was left a mess. But I think that's the important thing to do with this pay-per-view, and with every pay-per-view going up to WrestleMania from the Royal Rumble, is to succinctly put together the program and follow with it. And another question with the Elimination Chamber is, what should they do with it? Should one match serve to put forward the main event, or should both matches be used to put forward a main event? Or do you think they're just going to go with, yes, A is going to be, you know, the important one, and the other one's just going to be filler? And I think that seems to be something they're doing now from 2011 and 2012, the matches that they've had, where it very much feels like a filler program.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rumor is for this year that there's only going to be the one chamber match, and that's going to be the one for the Alberto Del Rio's title.
Okay.
To determine who's going to be the number one contender for that.
Right.
I think that serves better because we know Cena is going to go for the WWE champion, and The Rock is going against Punk. So there was no point having a chamber match involving Rock.
Yeah, because he wouldn't do
title.
it. He wouldn't do it. It would be no point. And plus, it would only be about 10 minutes because he'd beat everybody anyway.
Yeah. So I think this serves better because the WWE title it's doing its own thing. It's looking after itself. That story is effectively booking itself.
Yeah.
So and now, I mean, there was rumbles of it going to be Cena, Shield.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
I think that would be a terrible idea.
No, I think that's a case of the internet maybe fantasy booking a bit too
Probably.
much. Yeah, because
I hope so, because it would just that would be the pits. So for this run to WrestleMania, most definitely the one chamber match is absolutely perfect. You look back to last year's one, I think it ended up being Daniel Bryan against Santino Marella.
Yeah. Which was actually cool because they used it in a new way. Like, what else could they do with Daniel Bryan to set up the match at WrestleMania? Because Sheamus wasn't even in that match.
Yeah,
You know,
it was